Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Facets, which is episode 25 of season 3 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, one episode at a time. In this video I cover the third season episode Facets. So Facets is the episode in which Dax is having her Zhian'tara ceremony, where she has different main characters who are friends come and take over as being a host of one of her past hosts, so that she can physically interact with all of her previous hosts. And the ceremony goes pretty well until they get up to the last host, which is Curzon, who merges with Odo, and it causes a unique merge-in, like an actual joint Trill, where Odo and Curzon both merge into a new personality, and he can shapeshift immediately to look more like Curzon, and yet still maintains some personality from Odo. However, Jadzia is worried that she won't measure up to Curzon because she still holds fear over the fact that Curzon washed her out of the initiate program, and whenever she tries to approach Curzon about this, he ignores the topic and eventually just dismisses it as he just felt sorry for her, which is why he didn't oppose her reapplying. But this makes her self-doubt, and Odo and Curzon announced that they want to stay joint, that they don't want to go back. But after Cisco gives Jadzia a pep talk, she confronts Curzon / Odo about it, and she gets him to realize that he's just afraid to go back into her because he was in love with her, and that's why he washed her out, and he's ashamed of that. And he's like, you will feel the shame too if you take my memories back. But she says, no, you're a part of me. We should be together the way we should be, which is through Dax. And so Curzon does go back into Jadzia, and Odo is now cherishes the memory of what it was like being Curzon and playing tango and drinking and having fun. And Jadzia now has the memory of what it was like to be a changeling. There's also a side plot of Nog taking an initial test to get into Starfleet Academy, in which he fails, but it is later discovered that Quark sabotaged the test, which is on the holosuite, and Rom is furious and confronts Quark about it and threatens to burn down the bar if he interferes. And then again, so Nog retakes the test and this time passes. So was interesting to me watching this now after in Discovery season 5 they reference this episode directly, well, pretty much, because they reference the whole Zhian'tara, which was invented in this episode, and they in fact did it because in Discovery they were wanting to find this ancient information, so they wanted to talk to the scientist that was alive back in the 24th century. And so they did a Zhian'tara where the previous host of a certain symbiont took over Dr. Culber's body, which allowed him to do the acting and whatnot. And I remember I did like how Discovery did go out of this way in later seasons to try to reference more of Legacy Trek. And season 5 in particular, did a lot. It referenced the chase. It had an alien from the Armageddon game. It had the Breen, and we actually got to see what they looked like. And then they did the Zhian'tara and lots of other things. So, if anything, I did appreciate it for that. And it made me look back on this a little differently. That it's a normal sort of thing. Now, as for this episode, it's I like it. I find it really interesting. I think that the way it's structured makes a lot of sense to me, because we don't get to spend a lot of time with the symbionts, but we're not really meant to, because there's only so much story you can get to, and it seemed obvious that it was kind of just like a novelty seeing the different hosts, just quick scenes going by, and the main point of the plot was, Curzon, the confrontation with Curzon and Curzon merging with Odo. But I do like how I think we needed to see at least brief moments of all the different hosts, because if they skipped it entirely, I would have felt cheated. If Jadzia got together all the people, friends, and said, "Oh, I want you all to be different hosts," and then we don't actually see any of that on screen, they just jump straight to Odo and Curzon, I would feel ripped off. And so, but I don't think they needed to spend an enormous amount of time. We didn't really need to get to know Tarius. We didn't really need to get to know Tobin or whatever. Just those brief snippets that sort of tell them who they are. And I love how a lot of the actors sort of incorporate some of Terry Farrell's portrayal of Jadzia into their performance. So to sort of say that, this is why I have those habits. Like Nana Visitor doing the thing with holding the hands behind her back, just like Jadzia always does. And so that aspect I found really interesting. Now, the whole scene where Jadzia calls together her friends, and apparently Lita became her friend off screen, because previous to this she only appeared in a 2-minute scene where she was hitting on Julian, or they were flirting with each other. And so all of a sudden it's I mentioned this in her first appearance when I reviewed that episode, is that it was jarring for me to see her. I was like, who the hell is this? I didn't remember her for that 1-2 minute scene. But apparently they said that she and Jadzia became friends off screen, in between these two episodes. And I don't know, why didn't they get Jake? He's actually a main cast member. Why didn't they get him to do? I guess, I don't know. I mean, Jadzia is friends with Jake, sort of, so why didn't she get him to host one of it? I guess maybe he was too young. Instead, they get in this character that only appeared in 2 minutes of the show. That's like going back and getting a random cameo from season 1, although it was more recent. But still, it's I don't know. But she'll become, of course, more reoccurring after this. I think this is the episode that really establishes her as a reoccurring character. The other issue I have with this scene is how she starts giving Quark umaks and getting really close and saying, "Oh, this will bring us closer together." Now, I talked about that. I might have talked specifically about this scene in particular a lot of times before, but this is actually something they do a lot. Whenever a woman wants something out of Quark, they just grab his ears and start rubbing it, and they're like, "Oh," Vosh did it, and I think that freighter captain, the one that looks like she belongs in a hairband, she did it, and I think there's a few others. And it seems a common thing. Oh, if we want Quark to do something for me, just rub his ears until he does it. Here's the problem with that, and I talked about this before. They made it very clear. They called the Ferengi ears kind of an erotic zone for the Ferengi. So basically, and this is definitely how Armin Shimmerman plays it, he plays it like they're giving him a hand job. So they're basically saying that rubbing Ferengi's ears is essentially the same thing as giving them a hand job, and that's definitely how Armin Shimmerman plays it. So, and I think they always play for laughs, oh, it's funny, he can be easily manipulated. But if you think about it, how would the scene play if she just reached in his pants and started giving him a hand job, in the middle of in front of everyone? Because that's essentially what it is. They're just getting away with it because his ears. Like, that's not like something that characters like Jadzia should do. And it's, yeah, I don't know. And the whole way that she manipulated him by saying, "Oh, we'll bring us closer together," and she just had him take one of like her female hosts, who was like this old woman who had several children. And I know they played that scene, they tried to play for laughs, like it's hilarious. Like, oh, isn't that hilarious? Quark is, talking about giving birth and suckling a babe up to his breast. Oh, how hilarious, ha ha ha. No. That has shades of Prophet and Lace for me, which is not... I know it hasn't happened yet, but still, it's not something that I want to think about. And it's just dumb. It's not funny, and it doesn't make sense why. It's just the whole thing about Quark saying, "Oh, I don't want you to do it," whatever, and she has to manipulate. Like, just tell you, okay, that's actually really manipulative of her, to be honest. Like, she should respect his wishes. If he really has qualms, concerns about turning, like, that's actually a legit concern. Like, Quark's not being selfish or a dick. Like, he's being asked to, like, give up his body to a different consciousness. That's a huge ask. And I get if, that you're a good friend with Jadzia, you want to help her out. But it should be up to the individual. And she even said that at the start of the meeting. She's like, "This is up to you. I'm not going to force you to do it." And then she proceeds to manipulate Quark into doing it by essentially giving him a hand job in front of everybody. Like, what the fuck? Like, no. And it's honestly, it's obvious why they did it that way. They did for laughs. Ho, 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 isn't this funny? But it's not funny. It's like, especially if you think about it. She should have just been like, "Okay, fuck off then." No, not like that, but she should have been like, "I understand your concerns. I can ask someone else to do it," instead of manipulating him. It speaks very poorly of Jadzia, to be honest. But anyway, so, yeah, that scene where they actually had him do it was so dumb. It wasn't funny. Now, so they have Kira be Leela, which was interesting. I think I like Nana Visitor's performance there. Then they have O'Brien be Tobin, which was... I don't know. I can't remember if Leela was ever referenced before this. I think she might have been. Tobin definitely was. I remember this. Always remember this. He was referenced back in the second season episode of The Siege, where Jadzia went with Kira to operate this old impulse engine because she said that her second host, Tobin, was shy, no sex life, but was very good with impulse engines. And I like the way O'Brien played him. He was like, "Sorry." Like, and they put on a little bit of a different voice. I think it actually works. Like, when Nana Visitor does it and Kalmini does it, I think they both, like, convince me that it's, a different person. Now, I can't remember the exact order. I think Emily is next, who was the gymnast, which, I'm sorry, Chase Masterson comes off as Lita, because we've only seen Lita in like 2 scenes before this, so there's no reference. It seems like she's acting exactly the same as Lita. I couldn't tell the difference between them. So if I remember correctly, Emily was referenced in later in the episode Trials and Tribulation, because Jadzia goes to is back in time with Kirk and Spock and McCoy, and when she's on the bridge with Cisco, McCoy steps in and she's like recognizes him. She's like, "Oh, McCoy! Oh, I've met him before in a previous host." And Cisco's like, "Oh, was it Curzon?" And she said, "No, it was Emily when she went to Earth for a gymnastics tournament. And I knew he'd be the doctor. He had the hands of a surgeon." Wink, wink, wink. Sort of implying that they slept together. Here's the problem with that, though. Timeline does not match up at all. I know this is nitpicking. Some people, oh, who cares? It's just a funny joke. But no, that's no. The timeline wouldn't work at all because McCoy was around like 100 years before. And they say it was when he was younger. So let's say 120 years. Curzon was an old man when he passed on the symbiont to Jadzia. And let's say he was in his let's say he was about 100. And let's say he got the symbiont when he was 20. He had it for 80 years. And before Curzon was Duran. That was a very short period of time. But before Duran was Tarius. And now he did die kind of young. I don't think they ever specified how young. But still, Tarius did have it for at least, let's say, 15 to 20 years. And then before Tarius was whoever was taking over Quark's body. And she seemed to live a long life and had several children and seemed to grow into an old woman. And then before her was Emily. And so Emily was probably like 100 years before McCoy was born. Maybe 80 or 60 if you want to be generous, but it was way before. Like, this timeline does not match up at all. But, because what's-her-face who inhabited Quark probably had a symbiont for like 60 years at least. And then Tarius was probably around for 20 and 30. And so no. It doesn't match. But anyway, so I'm just being nitpicky. But I was thinking about that when I was watching that scene. I was like, really? No, this must have been a long time ago. But anywho, so yeah, I think all the actors did a really good job performing this. So let's get to Duran, though. I didn't really care for this one either because this is completely inconsistent with how Duran was portrayed in what was that episode called? I want to say Equinox, but that's not right. It was Equilibrium, that's it. It sounded similar. Equilibrium, yeah. But in Equilibrium, I think it kind of portrayed like Jadzia's like being at peace with Duran once she accepted that he existed, and she even like started playing the same music, and they sort of like did that symbolic like hug where he's just like, you're a part of me, and she like embraced him. And it seemed like they did say that he had a temper, but he obviously wasn't like this fucking nuts because he was able to fold the symbiosis commission into giving him a symbiont. So he must have not been that terrible. Point is, like, this whole scene is just an excuse for Avery Brooks to overact. Which, him, he will take any excuse he can get. But it's just an excuse for him to go, you're so pretty! Oh, you're nothing! And, yeah, this is probably, besides Quark, this is probably my least favorite performance. Just because it's too fake. Like, it's too obvious. Like, and it doesn't really match with what the hell they showed Duran, and the whole thing with him like banging his head against the force field and then choking her. It was like obvious, just there to create tension. It's just an excuse to have a tension filled. It actually doesn't make any sense. Like, what is Duran trying to accomplish? And don't even say, oh, it's because he's crazy, because that is always the laziest in the world excuse. That's a bad writer's excuse for villain motivation. If your only answer to why this villain is doing something is he's crazy, then you suck as a writer. I'm sorry. At least in this instance. That is not a good reason. And why? But what is he hoping to accomplish by choking her and calling her? And that's inconsistent with them, sort of accepting each other. I would have liked something more calm and mellow and more in touch with, it could show that he's off in the way, but having him, say she's nothing and insult her and then try to choke her out and bang Sisko's head against the force field. It's just cheap. It's just there. Oh, isn't this suspenseful? Didn't like it. So, but Bashir's Tarius was cool. Now, Tarius will be explored a bit more. I think, it was mentioned in the episode Equilibrium that Tarius died in a shuttle accident. I think that's when it first mentioned it, because that's how there was a sort of space in between Tarius and Curzon. But Tarius, of course, will be explored more in the episode Rejoined, when Jadzia meets up with Tarius's wife, who's now in a different host. So they'll explore his sort of background more. I mean, we won't get to that flat out see him. They just references to them being married. And he didn't mention anything about him being married in this episode, but he was only on there for a brief moment of time. Yeah, but I like the way that Alexander Siddig portrayed him. Again, he sort of changed his voice a bit, and he was like, oh, you need to live a little. So it's just a brief little snippet, but I liked what we got. So the main event, though, of course, was Odo. I think Renee Auberjonois did a really great job portraying a different character, and it was a really interesting concept to have a joint that, because it's Odo, because it's a changeling, it ends up being a joint character rather than simply taking over the body. And I do love how Renee Auberjonois would switch back and forth just slightly. It wasn't a huge shift, but you could tell it sounded more like Odo. He's like, I'm gonna give that little troll, the way that he said it just like Odo, and he was like, did I tell you I love you, and kissed him on the head. That was great shit. And of course it was great seeing a representation of Curzon, since we've heard so much about Curzon over and over again, and actually see him interact with Sisko was great. And what I really love is Sisko's pep talk to Jadzia. And so we get some really great Sisko and Dax moments occasionally throughout the show. I think my favorite might have been Rejoined, which I'll get to that when I get to that. But this is another one of my favorites. I love how he sort of lays it down, and she's willing to give up. She's like, oh, maybe it's better he remains in Odo. They seem happy, and Sisko gives her tough love, lets her know, no, you're just being scared. And Curzon, he's a great guy. I loved him, but sometimes he's wrong, and you need to actually go up to him and confront him and tell him that he's wrong. And it was a great scene. And then I also love the scene where Jadzia confronted Curzon about it and said, no, this is, I need you back here, and wouldn't let him get away with this shit, just like Sisko said. And it was great. Now, as for the revelation that Curzon was in love with Jadzia, I do have a problem with that. Because, now granted, right now the memories are missing from Jadzia, so she can't access currently Curzon's memories, but she has his memory, so she should be aware of that. She should have realized that the second she joined with Dax. That, oh, that's why Curzon locked me out, is because he was in love with me. Why would she not know that? And yeah, I don't know. I talked before about how I feel like some people just don't get how Trill works, but for me it's pretty straightforward that they're joined. It's not like there's 8 different... See, this episode confuses it a bit, makes it seem like each host is different, but it's not. It's the Dax symbiont is always the Dax symbiont. It just acquires new experiences each time it joins with the different hosts, and it carries those experiences with them. So so carry all the memories of each host. So this ritual is just a way of separating those memories from the symbiont, but usually that's all one and the same. It's all part of Jadzia Dax. So which is why she should know that Curzon's in love. Like, she should have known that instantly. And it was just kind of, they did it just so they could create a plot and have a twist and this thing. So that did seem a little fake to me. But I did really like the interaction between Jadzia and Curzon. Like, that really, and that scene at the end with Odo and Jadzia was great. Especially, and it's really interesting. I don't think they ever touched on this again. They probably should have. How Jadzia now knows what it's like to be a changeling, that has those memories now, those brief memories when Curzon was joined with him. Like, that's really interesting. And I did wish they played more on that, and that she could relate to Odo more in the future, but I don't think they ever really touch on it again. I think they should have became closer after this episode. But anyway, so let's get to the B plot. I actually did like this B plot. I have spoken ill about Nog, and particularly with him joining Starfleet in the past, but I actually like the storyline because this is before Bog comes on the show. So we're not there yet. I'll get there when we get there. It's not until season 5 where Nog disappears and is replaced by Bog. A totally new, different character that doesn't at all resemble this one, but somehow is played by the same actor, and everyone calls him Nog, even though it's clearly not the same character. Hasn't happened yet. This is still Nog. And it's interesting seeing the him like really desperate to join Starfleet and doing all the tests, and you could tell throughout the episode that Quark is very not okay with this and not really against it, and the whole thing about him trying to get, why don't you be more like your friend here? And it's like, he's a writer. He's not going to earn any profit. And Quark's like, if you write a holosuite program, you can earn some profit. And Nog is like, no, thank you. But then when we find out that Nog fails, and he's like, I can't believe I failed. Like, I don't know. It's been decades since I've seen this episode for the first time, but I'm pretty sure I remember, like, knowing instantly, Quark fuck with it. Which turns out to be the case, especially the way Quark's like, screw Starfleet then if they don't appreciate you. You would have made a great officer, but there's always a place for you here at Quark's. And what I don't think I had noticed before, though, is when I paid attention to that scene, they show Rom, and I think you can see Rom like putting it together, like when Quark says that, there'll always be a place for you. They show Rom looking at him kind of suspiciously, and I think he's realizing that, Quark fucked with the program. And that's great. Again, it's kind of the new version of Rom that's actually a bit smarter and can pick up on stuff like that. Idiot Rom from season 1 would never be able to. But I love how he picks up on that, and he goes and inspects it and does indeed find out that Quark fucked with the program. And it's actually one of my favorite scenes with Rom, where he confronts Quark about it and is flat out, like, gets in his face. And it's because he never acts this way. Usually he's subservient. He's like, yes, brother, and cowering. And again, this is totally not how they would have portrayed him in season 1 and 2. Like, he would never act this way. But again, this new version of Rom does act this way. And I loved it. I love how he just got right up into Quark's face and was like, if you ever do anything to hurt my son again, I'll burn your bar to the ground. He's like, you wouldn't dare. Oh, yes, I would. He, like, keeps pushing him and, like, getting in his face and pushing him against the wall. And he's like, remember that, brother? Like, that was great. Fucking love that scene. That was, like, a really good scene. And then, of course, Nog passes, and they all celebrate. Like, that was a pretty cool scene as well. I think this is the first time that anyone on Deep Space Nine orders root beer. It will become like a running thing, and they had that whole root beer speech in Way of the Warrior, which isn't that far away. And it seems like that becomes the typical Earth drink. That's the stand-in from the Earth drink is root beer, which... By the way, I fucking love root beer. They didn't really have it, at least when I lived in New Zealand. They started getting it towards the end. But when I first moved there, they didn't have root beer at all. It was like so hard to find. Like eventually I had to go to like stores that would import like A&W and buy a can for like $3. But they started, but it still was not commonplace, but it was a bit easier to get when I left New Zealand. But I remember when I come back here to visit, I would like just drink tons of root beer. But I drink it a lot, and I fucking love root beer. Love black licorice too. This is where I disagree with Mariner. She's completely wrong. I love black licorice and root beer. Fucking amazing. And wintergreen. Have you ever tried wintergreen mints? Wintergreen mints are so good. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting off topic. I would now like to thank all those that support me on Patreon. It's very much appreciated. It does help me continue with my channel, does inspire me to keep going. I'd like to give a big special thanks to Brandon Neilhouse and Jordan Johnson. Thank you both so very, very much for your strong support. I'd also like to give a shout out to Tyler Cease, Benjamin Mead, Antarius, Greg Marley, Francisco, Chuck Hooks, Kyrie091, Anthony D. Benedictus, Ricky, Matty Jester, Joel Lavals, Alessandro Migalacio, Norman Buckwald, Stephen Kennedy, Brenton Berg, and Allison Fordyce. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. So we do have a few Patreon comments on this episode. First comment is from Norman Buckwald. He says, "Here's my review for Facets, which I accidentally at first posted in your call for the review for Faces. I did not read it clear enough, and then after posting, reading the other reviews, LOL. My favorite, Duran, the over-the-top acting of Avery Brooks. Interesting that Leela played one of Dax's roles, considering this was maybe the second time Chase Masterson appeared in DS9. I guess her ability to do gymnastics helped also get her a good recurring role in the series, and I'm glad. I like her. Smiley face. Unlike the failure of the actors to be Bashir's aspects and distant voices, the success to see all of them portray the various Daxes is what makes this penultimate of the season episode quite pleasant in my memory. Meanie did well. Visitor, as always, did excellent. Shimmerman was hilarious. And Renee did a fantastic Curzon. I always think of this episode fondly for allowing the actors to flex a bit, but not to say bad writing like in Distant Voices and some of the Mirror episodes. The only flaw, and I don't know why it bugs me, is the whole issue of Curzon falling for Jadzia to justify why he first rejected her. It sort of bugs me and seems unnecessary. It's interesting enough that maybe he and Odo fused and wanted to stay that way. I'd rather that be the angle and something Sisko and maybe even Jadzia herself rectify rather than throw in this reason. I'll give this episode 8 so pretties out of 10. Oh yes, let's address the obvious plot hole. If Curzon memories fused with Odo, wouldn't Dax know about his love for Kira? At minimum, Dax should have not looked so surprised a couple seasons later when Kira shared this with Jadzia at least. Ooh, that's a good point. I actually didn't consider that. I don't know, maybe Curzon... if they're fused together, you think that he would know everything about Odo, but maybe he only knew what Odo thought about in the moment, and maybe Odo didn't think about being attracted to Kira at all during that time. I don't know. That is a good point, but I think, yeah, the falling in love that Curzon was in love with Jadzia, the only reason that bothers me is because she should know it. She should have that memory. It shouldn't be a surprise to her. Other than that, I don't really have an issue. Like, I think, other than that, if it wasn't for that plot hole, I think that would work. Like, I do like how they played it and how he was ashamed and she tried to convince him to go back. Like, that was all good. The only problem is this should come as no surprise. But anyway. And, yeah, I obviously disagree with you about Avery Brooks and Armin Shimmerman. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, Avery Brooks being over the top is always fun, but it's just too contrived in this episode. But anyway, next comment is from Kyrie091, who says, Facets more like, shit. I like this one. I like evil Cisco anytime I can get him. I like the idea of meeting the previous Dax host. The premise is a bit magic-y for my taste, but if I set aside my disbelief and just enjoy the story for what it is, I end up having a really good time meeting the previous host. I can't wait to meet the next host, Vic Dax. And then Stephen Kennedy replied to this post saying, or Borg Queen Dax. Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. Vic Dax, Borg Queen Dax. But anyway, yeah, I don't know about it being too magic-y. Like, I didn't really have an issue. It didn't seem any more magic-y than Star Trek usually is. Like, they said it was a telepathic link, and I was like, wait, when did the Trill become telepathic? Like, when did that happen? I don't remember this. But whatever. It's like, it's not that much different from a mind meld when you think about it. Also, it's like, it is a bit hokey that they're able to separate out the memories of each host when they're all integrated into Dax, but I am willing to just go with it. And yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't find it too hokey. Anyway, next comment is from Stephen Kennedy, who says, this was an interesting episode all about Dax's former hosts. The only part that I hated was when Odo/Curzon tells Jadzia that he loves her. Rom stands up to Quark. I absolutely love that. It's about time he grew a pair of balls. The way I see the Dax symbiont is like watching a film franchise that you haven't seen in 10 years. There are scenes you remember thinking that are in part 2, but instead they're in part 4, so on. Or scenes that are in 2 completely different franchises, for example, Friday the 13th and Halloween. I like the way Jadzia is finding out new things about herself from the previous host, because it's silly to think that she would know all unless she said about 7 portable hard drives to store 7 lifetimes of memory. She should know that Curzon loves her. Of course she should know that, as it was built up for another episode playing God. Did that reveal pay off? Feck no. He was just a horny old bastard. The reason why Jadzia beat up Cisco is that Duran told her that Benjamin defiled the very version of Dax. So my rating is 8. I like the scene between Dax and Odo in Quark's bar. Out of 10. Have you reviewed Extreme Measures and that episode when the Doctor took over 7 of 9 and got her drunk? Answer to both those questions is no. I have not reviewed Extreme Measures, nor have I reviewed Body and Soul, which is the episode you're referring to. So you shall have ample opportunity to make comments for those. So that's actually an interesting way to explain it. That it's like remembering the whole franchise analogy, thinking something happened in part 2, but it actually happened in part 4. I get that, and I think it's like, it's the way memory works, is something, you recall some things and some things blend together. But yeah, especially having hundreds of years worth of memories, that everything wouldn't be clear. It's like, even in real life, in like present time, there's the notion of being hypnotized so that you could remember things that you repressed, or maybe just things that you just kind of forgot. Like the episode Violations touched on that before they got into the whole Violations storyline, but just the whole thing with the Yulians getting Keiko to remember that she used to paint with her grandmother. And I know some people called it out, like, oh, if it's important, wouldn't she remember? But no, you lose some of those finer details. And so it makes sense that the same thing would be for Jadzia, but with those memories separated out, and then they're go to another body where they only have that one host memories, then things would be a bit clearer, and to her to physically interact with them would make a lot of sense. So I do think the premise does make a lot of sense, but as you point out, she should freaking know that that Curzon loves her. Anyway, next comment is from Antarius. He says, I'm a bit surprised that this episode is so well liked. In my humble opinion, it is quite boring and uninteresting. Normally, I would skip it. In the fight between Dax and Sisko, we see the most obvious stunt double since TOS. My rating is a 3 out of 10. Wow, 3 out of 10. Very low on it. Now, I didn't notice the stunt double, but I wasn't paying close attention. If I went back and watched the scene and analyzed it and paid close attention, I'm sure I would be able to spot the stunt double. But here's the thing, with TOS, I don't need to be paying attention. It's beyond obvious. I could just be casually watching. I was like, that's clearly not William Shatner, but it's like some older guy with facial hair. So I think comparing it to TOS is, if it was that bad, I would have noticed. Anyway, nothing can be as bad as TOS. Anyway, next comment is from Benjamin Mead, who says, Avery Brooks smashing his head against the force field. So bad it's good. Jadzia! I echo what others have said. Pretty okay episode. The first half is interesting. The Odo Curzon stuff is good too. And Jadzia having to stand up to Curzon is a good character beat. The I'm in love with you stuff, not so much. Not one of the best, but also not one of the worst Dax episodes. I always think this episode the most as the one before the adversary. Yeah, I never really remembered it so much as being the penultimate episode of season 3 or coming right before the adversary until I look at the episode order. I'm like, oh yeah, of course. But that's just me. Anyway, final comment is from Brandon Neal Howells, who says, why is this episode so highly thought of? Everyone overacts. My reaction to Dax's previous host was, fuck me sideways. This group of neurotics belong in a Woody Allen movie. They're not characters but caricatures. But it doesn't matter because we don't get to know them. I like the Odo/Curzon mingling, but it is too little too late, and Curzon nerves Jadzia. Give me a fucking break. I would have liked to see Jake housing one of Jadzia's previous hosts. I found the Nog storyline far more interesting. It's good to see Rom finally standing up to Quark. Rom giving Nog a tailored cadet's uniform shows his love and pride in his son. Who knew Lita and Jadzia were friends? They have only met at most twice before. 5 Trills giving Ferengi hand jobs out of 10. Well, you and I kind of disagree on this one. So, as far as all of the previous hosts being caricatures and barely appearing, I don't think so. I disagree. I don't think they're caricatures. I think they could come off that way because they don't appear very much. We only get a brief scene. But as I mentioned in my review, I think that actually works. We only require a brief scene. I think it would confuse the episode to show too much of them. And also, it would be a total jip if we didn't see any of them. So I think the way they did it by just having the brief snippets And I could see, especially like the Tarius, I was like, oh, live a little, and Tobin being like, sorry, and then Nana Visitor talking all weird. Like, I can see how you could say they're caricatures, but I actually don't think so. I think that's just, we're getting a snippet. We're only getting a so small snippet, and I love how the actors play it. I don't think everyone overacts. I think it's just Avery Brooks. Personally, but that is just me. Everyone, I think it's unanimous. People seem to be split on this episode, but it seems like everyone is in agreement that they don't like Curzon being in love with Jadzia. I only don't like it because she should know it, but other than that, I actually don't have an issue with it. But that's just me. Anyway, thank you, patrons, so much for your comments. So my rating for Facets out of 10, it's going to be an 8. Extremely good. Now, because I thought I was going to give it an 8 before it came on, but I was tempted to downgrade it to a 7 after talking about it, because there are plot holes, like the whole Jadzia not knowing Curzon loved him or loved her, and then there's things that annoy me, like the whole Quark scene. Why is she giving him a hand job in front of everyone and manipulating him into doing something that he doesn't want to do? That seems fucked up. And the whole scene with Quark, like, oh, he's a woman, isn't it funny? That's too Prophet and Lacey for me. And Avery Brooks is overacting. This is inconsistent with how Duran played. So for all those things made me want to like downgrade it to a 7. But in the end, I decided to stick with my guns and stick with the 8, because as much as those things annoy me, I think the things that I do like about this episode are really good, and they overpower the stuff I don't like. Like the whole Odo Curzon thing, I think is amazing. The scene we get between Sisko and Dax was amazing. The scene we get between Curzon and Jadzia was amazing, and I actually love the way they played those different vignettes with all the different actors playing the different characters. I thought that was very fascinating, and I actually really liked the B plot with Rom and Nog. Believe it or not, I thought this was actually, especially the scene where Rom stands up for his son. I thought that was amazing. Maybe the best Rom scene in the show. So I'm gonna stick with an 8. Extremely good. So, that is it for my review of Facets. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe. All those sort of things help me out a lot. And if you'd really like to support the channel, you could do so by supporting me on Patreon. There is a link in the description below. Different rewards for different tiers, such as you can leave comments for me to read my videos. I do a patron-only series of videos exclusively for patron supporters where I revisit reviews that I've already done, and other rewards such as pre-releases and requesting a video for me to do stuff like that. So let's see what's coming up on the old channel here. Thursday, I'm going to be over on Patreon doing one of those patron-exclusive videos, doing Revisited for the Adversary, the Season 3 finale of DS9. Then on Saturday, I'll be ranking all of the episodes of Season 3 of Deep Space Nine, my traditional thing I do when I'm finished covering a season, rank all the episodes of Season 3 of Deep Space Nine from my least favorite to my favorite. And then on Monday, I'll be doing the same thing for Voyager Season 1, ranking all the episodes of Voyager Season 1 from my least favorite to my favorite. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out as I continue to cover Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager, and many other videos on Star Trek and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.